We are 20 centuries removed from the language and events of the New Testament, and even more distant from the narrative of ancient Israel in the Old Testament. To appreciate all that the Word of God has to offer, we must become immersed in the culture of ancient Israel. For example, Jesus chastised some of the self-righteous leaders by calling them hypocrites. This term was used of actors who performed in ancient Greek theaters. It was the custom for these actors to wear a mask that identified which character they were portraying. The original Greek word that has been translated hypocrite literally means judging from underneath. That is, these religious leaders were hiding their ungodly words behind a mask that made them appear to be knowledgeable and virtuous. And they were judging others without demonstrating their knowledge by righteous behavior. Then Jesus likened these irreligious leaders to whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. I want you to imagine now that you are living in the north of Israel at the time of Jesus, perhaps in Nazareth or Capernaum. God has commanded that 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which He chooses. That place became Jerusalem after the people entered the Promised Land, and it was the custom that the whole family would travel to Jerusalem to worship God at the temple. Using the Roman road that traveled through what is now the western part of Jordan, you are walking with a family group or a village group for 120 miles, which is going to take you 7 days. As you are walking to Jerusalem, you are passing by cemeteries where people have been buried. Their graves are easy for you to see because they have recently been whitewashed with a solution of lime and water that was used for painting walls white. The Jewish body of religious leaders at the time of Jesus had ruled that graves and tombs must be given this fresh coat of whitewash in the days leading up to the pilgrimage festivals, which would replace the previous coating that had been washed away by rain. The tombs were painted white because ritual purity was very important to the people of ancient Israel, because these practices represented their commitment to live a life without sin. In the Holy Writings, God had declared that anyone who touches a corpse and does not purify himself defiles the tabernacle of the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from Israel. The people applied this commandment not only to the bodies of the dead, but also to where they were buried. So the brilliant white paint will alert you to the presence of a tomb and prevent your touching the tomb by mistake. If this happens, you will be refused entrance to the city of Jerusalem and will be unable to worship God at the temple. Now we come to the words of Jesus with a message that speaks to us today. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Jesus is directing these cutting remarks to religious leaders of His time who were depicted as wearing masks that cover their ungodly words and lives. They were misleading the people in the same way that some of our leaders are misleading us today. They say things and do not do them. Leaders of God's people should walk the talk by demonstrating in their own lives what God is teaching His people to do. Jesus then continues to describe these religious leaders. They tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders. These words are referring to what we call legalism, which promotes traditional worship rather than adhering to the Word of God and honoring Him from our hearts. Then we hear that these hypocrites do all their deeds to be noticed by men. Too often we are taken in by outward appearances, or by the power of a gifted tongue, or by words we want to hear instead of the words of God. So don't be a hypocrite in your own life by wearing a mask that covers your inner thoughts and sinful actions that are contrary to God. Instead, demonstrate your love of God by a righteous walk that others can see. And don't be a whitewashed tomb, a person whose life appears righteous on the outside, but is dead on the inside. Only when we walk in the ways of God are we truly alive with Him. When we fall into sinful ways, we are dying a slow death of pain and suffering because we have separated ourselves from God.